Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Hanging with the Hoopers podcast. Tim and Andrew Hooper, your hosts, and excited to be back in the studio. Listen, we believe the attitude of leadership is everything. Andrew, good to be back, man.
It's really good to be back. Man. Attitude of leadership is everything. It is the new year, so we're excited. 2023.
Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year. Yeah. Excited to get back into the swing of things after a great holiday season. So glad to be with you, brother. It's good to be back in the studio.
Absolutely. Man, we got some cool topics we've discussed over the last month and just really put our heads together on some things. Current environment of industry, the economy, leadership, some of the coaching we've been doing in the last few months. So definitely some topics from in the trenches in the field, but also a few topics of just some how-to, some very practical sorts of things. So I'm excited to kick this one off. What do we have on tap?
I mean, on tap, first I want to hit on what you just mentioned, right? So the economy's everyone's talking about a recession, the most talked about non-recession that we've had, right? Inflation is real.
Yeah.
We're seeing in real estate a slowdown, right? All across the board. There's a lot of layoffs happening. There's a lot of uncertainty right now. So
people
we're really excited.
Chickens.
Yeah. I mean, to start the year, right. Eggs are at a premium. So if you own chickens, you're looking real good.
Painting potatoes for Easter.
That's right. That's right. So if you're, like us, we're going to be unpacking a lot of these topics that are relevant, current, situational this year. But to start, it was interesting because kind of sparked it. I was listening to a podcast the other day. Great podcast. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. The Jocko podcast.
Boom. Jocko, baby.
Jocko, Extreme Ownership, written a few other books as well. Great books. And the topic came up around decision-making in an organization. And it sparked my thought because recently I had some experiences where I've been a part of meetings with leaders, founders, CEOs, and as they're having conversations with their teams, they're setting the stage by sharing what they want to do and then opening it up to their team for their ideas after that. And it was really an intriguing thought. In Jocko's podcast, they were digging into some of that exact topic, right? Of a leader who was frustrated because her team was always coming to her for all their questions, everything they needed. They were running it all by her. And she felt like, hey, I pay you a lot of money. You're very qualified. You're very educated. I pay you a lot of money to make these decisions, right? Yep. So why are they still coming to you? Well, as they started to unpack it and kind of weed through, the exact thing I just mentioned was happening. Starting meetings where you're verbally saying that you want ideas from everybody, right? But then you're starting the meeting off as a leader with your idea.
Wow.
So if we think about it, in a meeting setting or even in a one-on-one, if we start with our idea of how something should happen for a particular scenario or some vision or strategy we have for our business, right? And then we're turning it over to the employee or our senior level manager below us to share their ideas. Like, what are the chances they're going to be truly honest about what their idea is?
Yeah.
Or are they just going to kind of, well, you know what? It sounds like she's already had her mind made up here, so we're just going to go with that.
Right.
And subtly, you're just training your team to come to you before they make any decisions because your idea is probably always winning as a leader. And if you're doing that.
And what I'm hearing from the story is she didn't see that. Sometimes we're inside of our own bubble of leadership where we feel like, man, I've done every decision with my team on Zoom or in person or whatever our case may be. But what we're not realizing is exactly we made every decision. Yes, we felt like we were collaborating because we pulled everybody together, but it was to tell them what we had come up with or our decision. And
as A-type leaders, right, in that scenario, a lot of us are really good at making our ideas like presented in a way where everyone else feels like it's their idea, right?
So
persuasion.
So speech. When I took speech class, one of the speech types that I loved in college was persuasive speech. I worked on some political campaigns. I have that knack to try to persuade people to a certain side to get buy-in. That's my downfall often as a leader is I can come across very opinionated about something. I can get super passionate about something. And if you're not careful, your team will look, analyze the situation and say, it's not worth fighting today. Yep. If it becomes an existential threat to them, they'll go and fight. They'll go and fight it. So got some production background noise in the studio. Crank it up. I'm not fighting this today. You know what? We'll go along with it. It's not a threat to me. I don't like your decision, but we'll go along with it. And so we take buy-in and basically shelve it because we didn't generate buy-in from the very get-go.
It reminds me of a story that I read about, and I've heard brought up in these scenarios. Jocko brings it up. Other people bring it up. But General George Meade, during the American Civil War, at the Battle of Gettysburg, it was a well-known fact that he would bring his officers together for meetings, and he would get the ideas starting with the junior officers up towards senior.
Wow.
And it's a really powerful concept in business, or if you're a peer leader, if you're in any position where you're bringing people together to elicit ideas from them. Solicit or illicit, I don't know. We'll roll with it. But if you're looking to get ideas from somebody, starting with the kind of the low man on the totem pole, so to speak, in the room and working up from there, I think it's a brilliant way to actually get buy-in and belief created and kind of unbiased opinions. Because as the more senior people go, typically the more confidence they're going to have to share their ideas regardless. Right. Where if you start with the right-hand man of the boss saying this is what we need to do, everyone else is just going to acquiesce more than likely. Because again, it's too much effort, or this fight is not worth the effort that I'm going to have to put in to try to convince everybody, because it seems like leadership's mind is already made up. So really powerful point there on
not having your mind made up. You just said something so powerful. Going into a meeting, not having your mind. Now, some leaders may be listening right now about to just scroll to the next podcast or listen to the next thing. I want to throw out a friendly challenge if I can. Mm-hmm. Before you think this is a signing off of your decisiveness or your giftedness as a leader, because if you are leading a company, you have somebody seen potential in you, or somebody's giving you that role, or you've earned it from the ground floor up, or you've created it, or you started your own company, whatever you may be, where you may be listening to this, like, you're a leader for a reason. And people follow you for a reason. There's so many good points in that. We're not saying give up your decisiveness. We're not saying give up your leadership giftedness. That's what this whole podcast revolves around. But it's the attitude of leadership, where instead of our opinion having to be forefront, our decision already done, go into meetings without your mind made up. You know what needs to be done, or at least you feel like you know what needs to be done. Have that resolve in your gut. If you have to stand up for something, if you have to make a moral decision, if you have to make a directional decision, if you have to right now do a difficult decision of furloughing or laying off, that's tough. So you have to go in knowing what has to be done. But if you can take a step back earlier on in the process to say, how do I go in without having my mind made up? Not losing your decisiveness or your giftedness at all, but pulling together all of those frontline managers, the people who may see something that you haven't yet thought of, pulling all of them together. We're not looking for consensus here. We're not looking, some people are right now, you're saying nothing will ever get done. We're not talking about that. I believe more gets done when everybody feels they had a voice at the table, they were heard, and then as a leader, you can come back and say, love that point that you brought out to us. I think in a future quarter or down the road, we'll be able to go focus in on that. However, at this time in the company's direction, we have to make this. And it's difficult for me to say that, but you have that conversation. Consider this. If you never heard from somebody, but you still went ahead and made your decision, this is where we're going, then they just quietly went by the wayside, not going to fight you on it, but they're inside either stewing on it or just simply disagreeing with you on it. You were never able to have a one-on-one conversation with that person because you didn't know where they stood on this. So go in even more so to understand your team where they're at, even prior to making that decision, so that you know how to go have some of those conversations. Again, generating so much more buy-in, so much more team cohesiveness, not giving up your decisiveness, but going in without your mind completely made up. So I love where you're taking this, bro, and where you coming from.
Well, that's a great share. Like, it doesn't mean you are not who you are because you're not making every decision.
Yeah.
I think many of our owners and friends on here that run companies know that you should make less decisions the higher you go up in a company, but they should be more impactful decisions. So it's the big picture, right? Wow. You empower your mid-level, your senior leaders, your mid-level leaders to make decisions on the ground and run them by you. And your job is not to shoot them down. Your job is to point out some things they may have missed, some considerations that they should take into consideration. Less decisions. You're not in the minutia of the decision making, but you're making the most impactful decisions. But I want to go back to something you said before you talked about the last bit there of bringing everyone together. Some companies, and many of these, when I worked out in Silicon Valley, a lot of the tech companies run with a lot of the best idea wins mentality. So a lot of people share their ideas, but best idea wins. And I don't necessarily love the whole thing of winning versus losing in idea competition, because many, many times the ideas that need to win, quote unquote, win for your company are probably a blend of a couple different ideas. And so if you create this culture where best idea wins and you measure performance based on who has had the most ideas that have won in your company, it can really, A, keep everyone else who might have a good idea from speaking up. B, it can build ego. We've all seen ego that comes from people whose ideas are normally taken and ran with, right? And what that can cause in an organization. You have a very top-heavy organization where the revolving door is at the bottom. You have a lot of churn, but then you have your kind of key people that always stay there. It's probably someone where all their ideas are always the ones implemented, and everyone else is just churning through, and it's not really a great fit, right? So you see that too. So instead of having a best idea wins, make it all about that collaboration you talked about. Whiteboard it. Take things from one idea that makes sense. If someone else brings up a blind spot, put that one in there that makes it right. Build this real coalition of ideas. Put something together that works for your business, for your unit, for your company, whatever it might be. And this can be so powerful in business if you take that approach. But it means taking that approach and being intentional with it. And checking egos, checking titles at the door, right? Which sometimes is hard to do. I can see you're chomping at the bit. So,
well, not chomping at the bit, although probably inside I am. But something you said, putting ego aside, but also the competitive nature of winning the idea, here's the thing. The topic of this podcast is empowering your team to make decisions. I have been part of organizations where the idea pitched in the boardroom by a senior level leadership member was none other than the welder or the shop floor maintenance manager or the shipping clerk. It was their idea.
Right.
And that person was privy to it. But what happens is when you're just rewarding those top ideas or the one who can pitch it best or articulate it. Yes, there's a gift for articulating an idea. And sometimes the people doing the grunt work, maybe they don't know how to articulate that. But going ahead and elevating them into that position of, hey, this came from so-and-so. I think as leaders, this really just comes down to, I think, a moral code inside of your heart. Are you worried who gets the credit for an idea or for the best decision forward? If you're not worried about who gets the credit, you will do exponential things as a company, not just as a company, big blow up on a P&L somewhere so you can get bought and sold in the Silicon Valley. I'm not going there. I'm talking about long-term success, building cohesion among the team, and actually helping that shop floor manager, that welder, the frontline person, the worker who's coming in every day through the employee side door entrance, and they're seeing things as they are, or they're talking face to face with the customer and they see things. It's like Undercover Boss, right? The boss never knew what was going on out at the satellite locations until they went as an undercover employee. Why? If you're listening to them and elevating them into a position where they feel like they have a voice, you are building a long-term success of opinions being shared, ideas being shared, welcoming it all. And then also not having any form of recourse when someone shares a bad idea, because again, that just shuts it down. Always keeping that coming and flowing in and then distributing the credit. Never self lifting or pointing back to yourself as, hey, I had this idea. And if a leader has the idea, what if you create a culture to say like, hey, where did that idea start? Where did you get that idea? And just really drill down 100%. So that you can understand what it's sparking or where is this sparking. What problem is this solving, right? Sure. But, you talked about, I don't know if I was talking to you the other day or somebody else,
And they brought that exact scenario up about, it wasn't you, I think it was somebody else. And I can't remember who it was. So now I'm a little annoyed. I can't remember. It happens.
You'll wake up at 3 a.m. with it.
I know, right? It was a trivet. That's a whole nother story for another time. But they were talking about it. They had an idea and a leader in the company pitched the idea on a call with the entire team. It was loved, but no credit was given. Now they were happy that their idea was taken and ran with, but inside they were gutted that they didn't get credit for it. And that mid-level leader walked away looking like the superstar to everyone on the call. And it's, to me, you said it's a moral code. I think a lot of it just has to do with emotional
intelligence.
Quotients. Yeah. Right. So EQ, are you thinking about the impacts when you share this big new or this great thing you did or whatever, but there was someone else who was instrumental in that? Think about like the award shows in Hollywood, right? They get up on the stage, and why do they normally get music off the stage? Because they're trying to thank too many people. Because they don't want to leave someone out. Why? Because they know that there were so many people that played a role in their success. And so I'm not trying to say that we should model our businesses after Hollywood actors, but there's a reason they do that, right? Because those relationships matter. And if you want to keep that flow of ideas coming from the people that matter most, which are your front line, you have to give credit where credit's due.
Give that credit
and
away.
Don't give for any, if you're in an organization where your job security depends on you having the latest and greatest best idea individually, like you should probably look for a different home, because I don't agree with that at all. It should be, you may not be the ideas guy. You may be the executor of the idea. You may be the implementation guru, right? We talk about this all the time when we consult business owners. Understand the strengths of your team and give credit where credit's due. Merit-based, not boss's pet or best idea wins. It just creates this very, like as we're discussing right now, this very unhealthy culture, where you're going to really end up suppressing, and you will end up creating a top heavy organization. It could be at a company owner level. It could be at a branch manager level. It could be at a store manager level, whatever unit you run. Ensure that everyone is in the loop and their feedback and opinions are valued. Cannot stress this enough.
And again, I mean, we're kind of dancing between generating buy-in, idea generation, opinions, welcoming them, but it flows into when you've empowered your team to make a decision. This is not just an idea or idea like you're putting things on a whiteboard. This is now, okay, what is now the next step? Here's everything we're looking at. What's the next step? How do we move this ball forward? Delegating that to a frontline manager, letting people at a branch level, or like in Jocko's case, they're going out on this mission, and his main goal, and Patrick Lencioni gives a great whole section of a book in The Advantage on this, is you have to have clarity. Where are you moving as an organization? Again, that will guide some of the idea generation. That'll guide some of the feedback, the opinions. If people know where you're going, and it's like with Southwest, wheels up. Well, if we're not getting customers to the airplane, something's wrong. I'm going to say something, because that's not our company direction, the vision. So it's clarity for idea generation and feedback, but it also has to be super clear what the vision is, so that those frontline managers and even an associate who's facing a client in a split second of, what do I need to do here? It's $5 in our error or in their error. What matters here? Empowering that frontline in such a way where they can make you pick the level, but a dollar decision where the company may take a small hit for the long-term lifetime of a relationship. So very critical. I won't delve into a phone call with Xfinity Comcast recently, and I'm not going to call out whether good or bad, but you can only imagine after an hour on a phone call trying to get somewhere, and it's, I got to go check on this. I got to go check on this. I got to get a manager. What can I talk to a manager? A customer is not going to have any more loyalty for somebody saying, I got to check with a manager. Now, there are certain decisions that absolutely need to get escalated, but for the most part, taking care of a customer's basic needs can happen at a frontline level, and it depends on if you are willing as a leader to go in, give super concise clarity. Here's where we're at. Don't ever let this ever be a downfall of a customer, and then empowering them, and never have recourse when they actually made a decision, good or bad. Praise them for making a decision, and then guide them on how to make a better decision.
That's right.
So on both sides of this thing, empower your team to make decisions. Praise them for it.
I think that's a great note to end this one on. Just in summary, are you creating an environment of collaboration? And then when it happens and ideas are shared, recognize your people for it. Yeah. Tim, you brought it home with that. Hit the nail on the head, good or bad. Recognize that they made a decision that they felt was right in the moment. Right. Reinforce that, and then coach after the fact.
Yes.
Influence after the fact.
Yeah.
Don't beat somebody down for making a decision they thought was right. Of course, unless it was a $1 million mistake, you might got to let them go.
So we're gonna put one quick semicolon for 30 seconds.
Okay.
Because this is very, very powerful. You may be a leader out there. You say, Tim, we've done all that. I've not gone into a meeting with a presupposed position. Like I've not made the decision. I've tried to generate buy-in. People have given buy-in, and yet this decision's still not being made. I've done everything in my power. Consider that your frontline manager or that new level leader, line leader, may not have the belief in themselves to make a decision. So you may need to go to the next echelon of a leader to say, I believe in you. I believe your decision in this will impact the good of the people and the organization, and really instill a belief. So let's not end with all the mechanics. Sometimes it's touching a soul to say, I believe in you, because our frontline managers, our up and coming leaders for our organizations, they need somebody who's been at it a long time to validate them and say, I believe in you. So don't forget to instill the belief, and that'll also help your team make decisions.
I love it. All right. On that note, we'll see you guys next time. Man, Tim, great point.
Let's do it. Leave your comments, feedback in the show notes here, right here on YouTube. Drop some comments. Send us your questions, your topics, what you want to hear from Hanging with the Hoopers, and we'll see you next time.